British Columbia is world-renowned for its natural beauty, diverse communities, and thriving culture. It's also known for being in the grips of a housing affordability crisis decades in the making, which has been compounded by a poison drug crisis and by the COVID-19 pandemic. The province has an ambitious plan to address the crisis through the largest investment in housing affordability in BC's history. Tasked with building tens of thousands of homes in hundreds of communities is BC Housing, the province's agency responsible for developing, managing, and administering a wide range of subsidized housing and homelessness services across the province. BC Housing doesn't do this alone. To address the challenge, they're working with hundreds of partners. In this podcast, you'll get to hear from those delivering innovative and exciting affordable housing solutions. I'm Sarah from BC Housing, and this is Let's Talk Housing. For today's episode, we'll be discussing what it's like for a successful and respected business, Spoon's Diner, to operate in a supportive housing and shelter building in the city of Victoria, British Columbia. For those who aren't familiar with supportive housing, it's housing for people who can benefit from on-site services, especially people who are at risk of or people who are experiencing homelessness. Before we begin, I'd like to acknowledge that we are recording this entire podcast on the ancestral homelands of hundreds of Indigenous peoples and nations across British Columbia, each with their own unique traditions and history. I am on the ancestral and unceded homelands of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh nations, who have been the caretakers of these lands for thousands of years. We offer respect to their peoples, past and present. Also, in full transparency, this episode is being recorded in October 2021 and reflects the issues at that time. Joining us today is Spoon's Diner owner, Danny Truman. Spoon's Diner has been in operation for 14 years in Victoria. Also joining us today is Ramsey Moffat with PHS Community Services, the nonprofit operator of the supportive housing and shelter that sits above Spoon's Diner. Ramsey, I'd like to start just by setting some context for our listeners. Can you tell us more about the supportive housing and shelter that PHS runs in Victoria?
So we operate in Victoria. We've got over here in about 2016, near the end of the year, to assist with starting up new housing that was going to house a well-established tent city. Shortly after, in early 2017, we opened a Douglas Street community located in Victoria, which is on the Lekwungen and Wasanich peoples of the Songhees and Esquimalt nations territory. So our site here has 25 units of supportive housing on the top floor, 22 units of supportive recovery right below that, and a 50-bed low-barrier shelter on the ground floor. So supportive housing sites are going to be staffed by mental health workers. They're controlled access, and there's supports available on site like laundry, assistance getting to and from appointments, meal services, and we also have a Cameco care team providing primary care to our residents as well.
Thank you for that, Ramsey. And Danny, I'd like to bring you to the conversation here. How did you react when you learned that there was going to be a shelter and supportive housing moving into your building?
Yeah, well, I mean, initially, honestly, it didn't bother me that much. I think I was a little naive, perhaps, what the challenges I would be facing at that time. So, when I had a chance to talk to some business owners that operate near supportive housing facilities downtown, I was a little surprised by the advice they were giving me. They basically told me, you will be on your own and you will have an uphill battle and good luck. And so that's when I got a little nervous. So that was my initial reaction.
So Danny, you were told you were going to be on your own. Was that your experience?
Was that my experience in the past 5 years? Yes and no. There is some truth to that, but we've also had quite a lot of support. I mean, BC Housing has been, quite an excellent landlord in many ways, and working with PHS while we're faced with a lot of challenges, we're making it work, and they've been incredibly supportive of us, and so it's trying to work together and get both of our needs met.
Ramsey, can you tell us, how has PHS worked with Spoon's Diner to make this partnership work?
At the outset, Danny came into it Obviously, we were coming into Danny's space and our staff space, but Danny came to it with a really positive outlook, a drive to watch it succeed, and like a really inquisitive mind about what is it going to look like, what are we going to expect, and it was really refreshing to actually be able to sit down with Danny and constantly troubleshoot things as they're coming up.
Ramsey, of course, PHS has quite a number of housing projects in Vancouver and in Victoria. Have you ever worked on a project where you're working this closely with a business owner as you are right now with Spoons?
No, this was a first for me. Coming from Vancouver, I was over there with the PHS for about 10 years in the downtown east side, where it is a very different climate. It's more well established. There's buildings all over the place, constant projects, constant busyness, and the neighbors know what to expect. So being over in the Burnside Gorge, where it is a little bit newer, supportive housing sites popping up, it's been very interesting watching things grow.
Danny, as Ramsey noted, some of these housing and shelter projects are new to Victoria. As someone who has lived in the community for many years, what has that change been like for you?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's interesting because we do have a different perspective than Ramsey, who's come from Vancouver, where, as he said, that community is more established. Here in Victoria, I've been here about 20 years or so, and for a long time, you just didn't see a lot of our homeless community. The housing crisis in Victoria is very real. We just don't have enough, space for people to live, let alone people who can afford rent, especially for people who can't afford rent. When the facility opened in this location, we did have quite a large tent city, as Ramsey mentioned, downtown, and it was causing a lot of concern among Victorians. And so this is what I think is what really, BC Housing, they stepped up and were like, we need to find facilities fast. Like, we have to house these people. And we are building, it was a hotel before and it was available to buy. So they did. And so it was an obvious location to move people into. It's when you're not faced with this every day, when you don't see this every day, and you don't work in this industry, in the industry of working with unsheltered people, is you're not used to it. Of course, there's going to be a lot of fear. There's a lot of stigma attached to it. Not just with unsheltered people, but with people facing addictions and mental health issues, and people, I think, are nervous of what that's going to mean. So I think with all these different facilities popping up in Victoria, and you're seeing it's becoming much more apparent. It's much more in people's faces of what this means, and it's a challenge. And pretending it's not a challenge, I don't think is helpful. It is a challenge, but they're a part of our community. We need to figure out a solution, and I think it's better to try to be part of the solution rather than just fight against it the whole way.
Danny, I'd like to dig into something that you raised there, and that's this issue of fear and stigma. Now that you have been a neighbor to a shelter and supportive housing for some time, how has your perception of people experiencing homelessness changed?
That's a good question. It's I think a lot of it is becoming more used to seeing what already exists. I used to live quite a while in downtown Victoria, and there was a homeless shelter up the street. So I was used to seeing people kind of lying on the ground and open drug use, but that was about it, kind of going, to work and coming home. That was really sort of the extent of my exposure. With the facility opening here, there's far more challenges. I mean, First, a big challenge is working with the stigma that I know a lot of the public would have is, I'm running a business and I'm responsible for 15 people's livelihoods, my staff. And I was very nervous of what this is going to mean. Are the public, are they still going to want to come to my restaurant if we have supportive housing right next door? And, I had an awful lot of people call me and say, like, I'm not coming anymore. This is like, I'm afraid for my safety. I don't want my car to get vandalized. I don't want my children seeing open drug use, and I'm not coming anymore. You have to move. And I was like, thank you very much. I understand your perspective, but we're trying to make it work. It's tough. I think a big part though is people get used to it. The reality is, people's safety is fine. No one's car is getting vandalized. No one is getting assaulted in the parking lot. That's just not a thing. I mean, yes, you are going to see open drug use. You are going to see, public defecation, odd behavior stemming from mental health issues. But that's about it. So if you can handle that, you can still handle going out into your city, because you're going to find this anywhere. This isn't just in this one spot of the city. This is all over. This is, and I think the more people get used to this, the more the stigma does decrease, because they get more used to it. And so the fear, as you mentioned, it does, it's not as scary anymore. People aren't jumping out at you. People aren't going to be breaking into your cars. That's just, as I said, that's just not happening. It's, you see people living their lives, and it's a struggle for them, and it's a challenge. And, keep compassion, keep the empathy, and go about your life.
Ramsey, I'd like to bring you in here too, because, as Danny mentioned, I love that line, better to be part of the solution. So Ramsey, what's your perspective on the role of fear and stigma when we're trying to deliver these services for people that need them in community? What role do you think stigma plays in creating barriers to delivering those services? And how can we all work together to be part of the solution in the way that Danny and you are in Victoria?
So stigma is probably the biggest marker, that folks are having to face. So if we're looking at, the growing economic disparity, we're looking at a continued housing shortage, bad drug policy causing overdose deaths, mental health needs well exceeding the supports that are available. I mean, neighborhoods across the country are changing. As Danny said, this is not a Victoria issue. This is a national issue. And so when we're looking at kind of the sites popping up and neighbors responding, which is not wrong. I understand people feeling fearful. It's really new for lots of folks. But the realities is that when you're seeing those folks accessing services, they're accessing them because there was nothing there prior. So often we see this kind of self-fulfilling prophecy of a fear-based response, people not wanting something in their neighborhood. When it does open, it gets accessed by a lot of folks. And so they immediately kind of recoil and say, this is exactly what we thought was going to happen. So opening more spaces, providing more housing diminishes, the large numbers of people seeking services in one given place.
That's such an important perspective. Ramsey, I'd like to build on that a bit. We know PHS provides supportive housing, recovery beds, and shelter beds all at this site. Why is it important to provide that range of housing options for people in the community?
It's been a really, really interesting kind of journey watching things transition. So we opened the housing portion, just the 25 units first. About 6 months later, the recovery beds were opened. And about 6 months after that is when the shelter opened. So we were kind of easing our way onto the site as things kind of kept expanding and growing, and the need was more and more apparent. So we've watched, people come in long-term street homeless into the shelter, move directly up into recovery, pop into housing to stabilize further, and, go off to market rent to raise their kids. So we do see those transitions that people would, traditionally call successes, though, success is a pretty nebulous word in this field, right? Success can be a person staying in a shelter bed for one night. Success can be a person saying hello. So by having so many different services available at the site, we're able to connect and meet with folks who are at much different areas that have a wide need of supports. So it's a really exciting site to be in.
I'd be remiss if I didn't bring up the impact of the pandemic, especially since we have you on the line, Danny, operating a restaurant during a pandemic. How has COVID-19 posed unique challenges or possibly opportunities for your business? And is any of that unique in terms of your relationship with PHS?
When COVID first happened and everything was shut down, it struck everyone right away. And a lot of restaurants chose to reopen on a takeout basis. We were not able to do that because of the housing shortage. Not only are people who live in the facility here at the location, but a lot of other people who are still homeless were coming to the location and just kind of set up camp in front of the restaurant and in the parking lot. And there wasn't a whole lot we could do. We couldn't really move them along because they had nowhere to go. And we were right in the middle of COVID. And my staff didn't feel safe working during that time with the community camped right outside. So we were not, so that was kind of disappointing. We weren't able to operate, but we reopened in June of 2020 along with a lot of other restaurants, and it was an adjustment period. It was we had so much empathy for everyone next door, not just the residents but the staff especially. It was a scary time for everyone working during then, and so, we were all just trying to kind of get through it together. It's, there was more disturbances than usual in that first little while we reopened. And, PHS was really great about supporting us as best they could. And, when we needed help with things, they would be right there, which was everything. That was everything to us. So, it was tough. It was tough for everyone, for every single business for COVID. COVID sucks. But we're getting through it, and they've been very supportive of us this entire past year and a half with COVID. So we're immensely grateful for that.
Danny, if you could share a message with other businesses that might have a shelter or supportive housing coming in next door, what would you tell them?
Yeah, I would give them different advice than I was given. I would tell them, first off, don't freak out. Focus on how you can adapt. Of all the challenges that us business owners face, this is one that's manageable. Trust me, it's manageable. You can do this. As we said, the housing and healthcare crisis, it's real. It's not going away anytime soon. And, our biggest fear is that we're going to lose business or go out of business if the public can't handle seeing homeless people on their way to our business. But this has not been the case for Spoons. It has challenges. There's daily challenges. I'm not going to sugarcoat that. There is, but they're manageable. And you work with the people who are willing to work with you. Ideally, next door, I'm so lucky that the staff they have there is fantastic. Ideally, I wish they had more. I wish they had enough staff to be able to truly support the residents of the building as well as the neighbors. I think this is where when facilities like this lack support from the surrounding community, it's because we're not being given support. That's why. It's not, a lot of people want to say, oh, it's NIMBYism. I don't think so. I don't think that's what it is. I think you'd be surprised how supportive people are, but they're pushed to the end, when neighboring businesses or families are expected to just put up with it and, pay out of their own pocket to deal with it. It gets too much, and people they're no longer supportive. If we had more support of helping the people living in these facilities, getting them the services and the resources they need, but also helping the neighboring community, because to pretend that there isn't a negative consequence is naive. There's a daily negative consequence, even just down to the increasing garbage, and the more support on that end, that is how communities are going to embrace these facilities. That is how people are going to want to work work for the solution rather than just resist it. And that's an uphill battle because everyone has budget restraints, right? I know, and it's not just PHS. I know it's other operators as well. They have a budget; they can only have so many staff, and in my opinion, it's just it's not enough. It's if we had more, that would make an enormous difference.
Thank you for that, Danny. And we're talking about food, I can't not ask this question. Ramsey, what's your favorite dish at Spoons?
I'm an old-fashioned 2 coffees, a little cream, a little sugar, basic breakfast with well-done potatoes.
Nice. And Danny, do you have a favorite? Are you allowed to say?
Oh my gosh. Well, our menu is huge, but our eggs Benedicts, we have so many and they're so good. Our chef is amazing. Yeah. Can I pick just one? Ooh.
Okay. That's fantastic. Oh, thank you both for joining us. Ramsey, Danny, thank you for joining us. This has been a really interesting conversation today on Let's Talk Housing. Appreciate your time. Let's talk again soon. To learn how to apply for subsidized housing in British Columbia, visit our website, bchousing.org. You can also call us at 1-800-257-7756. That's 1-800-257-7756.